Are you scared of the stereotypes that you hear sometimes for physics? Do you want an A in physics? Well, stick around to find out some tips that I use to get an A in general physics. Alright, so the first tip is to make sure you have the right mindset required to do well in physics. It all comes from here. You should approach physics with confidence. So don't listen to any type of stereotype that people have been saying about physics being this difficult course that not that much people do well in. So please do not let those stereotypes get into you. Or else you'll be one of those people, who don't do well in physics. And you don't want to be one of those people. And this also applies on test day when you taking those exams and taking the final. Make sure that you relax at least an hour before your exam. At that point, there's really nothing you could do to increase your test performance. And make sure prior to your test that you actually put it in the work so you could get your desirable results. Let me say that again. Put in the work to get the desirable results. And lastly, as my guy LeVar Ball said, speak things into existence. Doing this will help you bring that confidence and that belief that you will do well in general physics. Alright, so my second tip is to make sure you read any corresponding chapters or lectures notes before your lecture actually starts. And the reason you want to do this is to make sure you know what the professor expects you to learn. So what I do is usually I skim any chapters that I have to read prior to lecture, and when I skim these chapters, I'm just want to get a general sense of whatever things I need to know. And sometimes there'll be areas where there are difficulties, so with these difficulties, I would ask the professor these questions during lecture. So in this section, I'm not really expecting to know absolutely everything about chapter. I just want to get a general knowledge sense of what to know for that chapter. So my third tip is when you get to your lectures, don't just focus on the concepts, but also focus on the practice problems that are presented in those lectures. Concepts are the fundamental and the foundation of physics. Practice problems are the supplements. It doesn't matter if you study all your notes throughout. If you cannot apply those concepts to practice problems, then you won't do well in physics. If you can apply those concepts to practice problems, then you will do well in physics. The reason why I said that to focus on those problems in lecture is because usually the professors are going to have those questions, and those questions will be pretty much very similar to what you expect in an exam or in a final. So since these problems are pretty much high yield, you are expected to solve these problems without using any reference by the time you take the exam or take the final. And also don't forget about studying the concepts as well, because some professors might test you on just a concept and have no numbers involved. As usual, see what the professor emphasizes throughout his or her lectures. So for example, if they write on the board or if they repeat a certain concept, then of course you must know that concept. But if the professor skips a concept entirely, they probably don't have to know it as much, and you probably shouldn't be focused on a concept as much as other concepts. Alright, so my fourth tip is to make sure you go to your notes, but also work on practice problems immediately after your lectures. As I said several times in previous videos, studying should be daily and not just a few days before an exam. Studying just a little bit every day will allow you to get those concepts into your mind, but also be able to practice problems to the level that you can actually understand those concepts. So to study concepts, I use the Feynman technique, and the Feynman technique is just pretty much explaining concepts in your own words so that you can understand the material. And this can help you gauge whether you really understand the material or not. But in physics, it's not good enough to just review your notes using the Feynman technique. You have to start doing practice problems ASAP. So what I do is suggest the practice problems from the textbook, start doing any homework assignments that I've been given, attempt quizzes, etc. And I always try to do the problems first on my own, just because I want to see which level I am at currently with the material. And after I attempted these problems, I will usually review these problems, and if I get a question wrong, I will try to get an exact reason why I got that specific question wrong. For example, let's say if I had a problem regarding to find the current in resistance 2 or R2 using Kirchhoff rules, but I got the question wrong because I didn't know exactly what Kirchhoff rules was. So in that case, I'll go to my notes, find Kirchhoff rules, find that exact concept, and then use the Feynman technique to really know that material so that next time I will know how to do a problem that involves Kirchhoff rules. And I'll repeat this process of doing practice problems, reviewing to see what questions got wrong and exactly why. And I'll repeat those 2 steps until I get that question right. So my 5th tip is to try and join a group chat or a study group. And I'll say definitely do this because there are a lot of classes that are virtual right now. I'll say personally my 2 favorite platforms to use are either GroupMe or Discord. These 2 are usually very easy to join, and often a lot of students uses it, so it's pretty much available to pretty much everyone. I mean, that's what I think it is. But yeah, it's a great opportunity to ask questions, and it's also a good opportunity to help people as well. But beware, do not get too distracted on certain group chats because they will decrease your productivity. So only use it when you really need to use it. And in terms of study groups, they are a very good opportunity to just explain difficult concepts to other people and go through problems together as well. I would say to keep it at the very maximum 3, including you, so that you can get the maximum amount of productivity. If you have a study group of more than 3 people, and you pretty much be talking about any topic rather than studying for physics. Alright, so my 6th tip is to make sure you get help ASAP through your professors, friends, or third-party resources. Trust me, you do not want to be in that situation where you don't understand certain concept the day of an exam. So make sure to go to your professor office hours when you can, as it is a very good opportunity to get the help you need in an optimized way rather than searching through the internet. And sometimes there will be situations where you can search for the internet for a certain concept or question, but beware, do not use websites such as Check. No, beware, just don't, just do not use it all. First of all, they're way too general and they're not going to be tailored towards any class. So if your professor noticed that you use another type of way of solving a certain problem that he didn't teach you, then you could get called for it. And also, it's just a shortcut really. Like, you're not really putting in that work to solve for a specific problem. So that's why I will always recommend to go to office hours when you can, so that you're getting that help, but also you're building that relationship between you and the professor. And maybe, who knows, later on you might get a letter of recommendation for grad school or medical school or any other health professional school. With any science class, I'll always use third-party resources when needed. So my one main source to use was YouTube. And there was many great channels for physics on YouTube that I watched, but 2 of my most favorite ones were Organic Chemistry Tutor and Professor David Explains. And those 2 channels had practice problems that were actually very similar to the practice problems I had in class, but also they explained the concepts very well in a very simple level that I was able to understand it. Lastly, if you can, ask your friend for help. And when you ask a friend, I would just ask someone who knows what they're doing and or is doing well in the course. And it's a good way to get a question answered without waiting for office hours or just searching through a third-party resource. Alright, so my 7th tip is to make sure you give yourself enough time to study for midterms and the final. Obviously the time is going to vary on how much you study, but just make sure you give yourself enough time to understand the material and to do practice problems. For me, what works is to study and review for 2 weeks prior to midterm and 3 weeks prior to the final. And again, I give myself this time because I want to be able to review every single lecture and attempt every single practice problem or redo every single practice problem. So what I would do is to schedule how much time I need to study for mid or something like that. And again, I study for this time period because I want to study in chunks so that I'm doing a little bit every day, as I mentioned in previous videos. So for example, if I'm reviewing one lecture, sometimes it'll take me 2 days to review one lecture and then a day to do all practice problems relating to that chapter. And also this prevents burnout, and it will allow you to study for the final or study for midterm. My A tip is to rework on the practice problems that you've been doing since you reviewed the lectures. In this case, I'll do the same thing that I've been doing, but this time I will redo suggested practice problems, the online homework assignments, quizzes, etc. And this allowed me to reinforce the concepts that I knew already, but also see the gaps I still needed to learn about. Also during this time period, it was a very good opportunity for me to introduce more practice problems. The practice problems that I introduced in this period was practice exams if possible. And I'll usually get them from upperclassmen who already took physics already. And I like to save these during this period because these are the problems that are the most representable of how the professor likes to style the questions and test the concepts to you. And I'll make sure to do these in realistic text conditions. So in this case, that would mean to have your formula sheet, your calculator, timer, etc. And you most definitely do not want to have any reference materials that you will not have access to during your exam. Now there might be some practice problems that you don't really recognize from lecture, so for that case just skip it and move on because he probably doesn't test that question anymore. And again, like any other thing with doing practice problems, you should always review what you get wrong and provide a specific reason why you got that certain question wrong. If you enjoyed this video, click that like button and also comment down below on what tips help you the most in this video. I'll see you guys next time, and peace.